Życzymy Państwu przyjemnej podróży.
Okay, so hello everyone. As I said, this session is going to be in English, and this is a very special edition of the Freedom Games panel. It's not the usual panel, don't be surprised. So it is called How to Make Liberalism Sexy. And I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast, which I'm happy to share with my friend here. I am Leszek Jażdżewski, and this is Ricardo Silvestre.
Very good. The way he says Silvestre is getting better and better. Like tremendous. We are also the hosts of the Liberal Europe podcast that brings you this session. And this podcast is the European Liberal Forum project with the partnership of Liberté. We're very happy to share. And with the Social Liberal Movement think tank from Portugal.
Yeah, you might be surprised why I'm doing this with American, but don't get fooled, he's actually Portuguese, so...
I'm very Portuguese again. The American comes from another way. And in fact, I don't know if Blage is here. I don't think he is, but I've been trying to have a Freedom Games in Lisbon, so...
Yeah. I'm going to move to Lisbon as far as I have any serious offer, so yeah, please.
Very good. Very quickly about the podcast. It's a forum for open-handed discussions on European societal and economic questions, and we hope to provide our listeners the tools to be more active, more free, and more positive. And like Leszek is saying, we're co-hosts. He has a section where he goes into very, very interesting conversations. He's the brains of the operation.
Here's the looks, and here's the looks.
And from that, Leszek, to the people that don't know you, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I know that there are a lot of people who might be here for the first time. So I'm editor-in-chief of Liberté. I'm vice president of the Liberté Foundation, which is organizing Freedom Games, and co-host of the Liberal Europe podcast. So I think that's enough. Ricardo, how about you?
As for myself, I am an author and political scientist, again from Portugal, from Lisbon, and also I'm very interested about the future of democracy, debate in democracy, and democracy in the digital era. So with the pleasantries out of the way, we're going to tell you what's in store for this session. So first, we're going to have Leszek talking with our guest Sven Gerst. They're going to go a little more into the philosophical aspects of what is liberalism and how can we define it. And then
it's going to be Ricardo, who is going to talk with Tamas Toplak from ELF and Zoltán Ranschburg from Republikon Institute, and also the youngest MP from Poland, Aleksandra. And they will go into very practical questions, so trying to convey a liberal message to make as appealing as possible.
But there is something different, and there is something more, and actually very excited to do it because we're going to do something out of the box. After the first panel, we're going to do a game with the audience, with volunteers that we need to come here and to ask questions about the European Union and about Łódź and the Freedom Games. So please stay. And we also have, as a motivation,
there are prizes.
We have gifts for whoever volunteers, okay? And then we'll just randomly select people to come here and join us.
Right, so I think it's... that's it, right?
Let's call Sven to the table.
I will bring Sven here, and let's roll. Sven, please.
You want me to hold that for now? Where should I sit?
Whatever you want. Okay. It's like Brezhnev asking when can I take a piss in Warsaw? It's like whatever you want. says the first secretary. Right. All right. So Sven, you are a philosopher from UK. You're based in London School of Economics, right?
I was at King's College London. I was
King's
before
College.
at the London School of Economics. There's a rivalry, so you're already tapping into the.
Yeah.
You know.
Sorry, but you're a liberal philosopher, and I think that's why we want to ask you this very first question: how ideology can be actually sexy?
Oh, well, it's a kind of question where I could go in all sorts of different directions, like what it would mean to be sexy. Like sexy is something like very physical. It's like desire, right? Like maternal, like animalic, and an idea cannot be that. But when we talk about an ideology that is appealing, not like sexy because that's like something physical, but appealing, then it can be if it gives a vision. And that's already kind of giving you the idea what might be wrong with liberalism in particular. But what are the ideologies that are appealing, that are sexy? They bring something new, and they bring something that is a big vision. Now, if I jump ahead a little bit already and portray that with liberalism, well, liberalism is the status quo. Does it really give us something new? Well, not so much, so therefore not so sexy. On the other side, does it give you a vision? And I think throughout the freedom games, you get the sense that everybody always says it's up for the individual. Everybody can create their own society. That's not very visionary. It's very true. It's not very visionary. So it's not very utopian. So what makes a sexy political theory, I would say, it's visionary, and it's kind of radically new that people have not heard before. And there you can already see why we brought that up in comparison or vis-a-vis liberalism.
Right, so there were some ideologies that I think, it's a question to you, were sexy. Was fascism sexy, for example, at the beginning?
You corner me right there, but I evade the question about fascism and make it a little bit more
about communism, maybe in
yeah.
1920s. Was it sexy?
Sure, it's like
50s.
communism. Hayek has, in his brilliant piece, Intellectuals and Socialism, he makes the fundamental point that I think is still underrated until today, that the appeal of socialism was that it is fundamentally utopian. And we see that in the way socialism is communicated is always in the utopian way. Like what happened in the Soviet Union, well, that was not real socialism, because in theory we have the utopia, how it might look like, right? How the real world turned out, well, that was not real socialism, right? And so the utopian ideal, the dream world, that was always communicated. That's something that we see in socialism, and that we don't have in other ideologies. You have it in fascism, certainly, that there is an end goal to a certain degree, and that like already comes with a lot of connotation uttering that word, but there's a dream world, a utopian standard that we can aspire to, a vision that is outlined. And again, like I just asked the audience, think about what is the vision of a political theory such as liberalism. What is the liberal utopia? Hayek very much asked that question in his essay, Intellectuals and Socialism. And he says, liberalism doesn't have an utopia. Maybe it should have. Or it shouldn't. I don't know. But that's something that I guess is on the table here.
What you just said brings me to the book which we published, but it's not the only reason why it's worth reading. It is Adam Gopnik's 1000 Small Sanities. And I think it's a very appealing argument that the liberalism is a bit like a rhino, right? It's not a unicorn. Unicorn is actually very strongly connected to Łódź. You would know if you would go to see our stable of unicorns, which is like the centerpiece of transportation points here in Łódź. Well, you have to see it to believe that actually this really looks like a stable of unicorns, stajnia jednorożców, right? And so liberalism is not a unicorn; it's a rhino, because a unicorn might be slim, might be beautiful, might be slender, might be actually sexy. But it's only one thing by unicorn that is wrong. It doesn't exist, right? And rhino might be massive, might be, a bit slow in the head, it gets angry, and it's not a really beautiful animal, but it's real. So do you think that Adam Gopnik is right, and this is the appeal of liberalism? Or should we try to make liberalism more utopian and actually more unicornian?
I mean, first of all, I would resist the kind of analogy to the rhino that is slow in the head. Like if
it was a provocation. It was a provocation.
If liberalism is one thing not, then it is not slow in its head. It's the most robust intellectual tradition, and I think that to a certain degree it's part of its detriment that it has such a canon of intellectual work behind it, right? So it's not really slow in its head. But coming back to the argument itself. I would rather stay with the analogy between not the rhino and the unicorn, but in the love language of like sexy versus not sexy, right? And I just ask maybe the audience, whoever is in a long-term partnership, like just reflect. Yeah, you can also like you can also raise your hand. Who is in a long?
Define the long term. Define the long term. Okay, we have 1, 3, 4. Right. Okay, more people.
Just think whether you would use the word sexy to describe your partner. So I don't ask you to answer that question. Don't worry.
Of course.
Don't.
I hope you are here, and of course,
But
Magda. Yeah.
most likely we would not use the word sexy to describe our partner because we love our partners. And it's not just about sexiness, right? There's more to it. And what we have seen with political theories such as liberalism that are actual things that happen in the real world is that we don't have passionate desire, eros about liberalism. What we have for them is appreciation and love. And in an ideal case, and I think I will talk later why we might not or have fallen out of love for liberalism, at least on a global stage. But that's maybe the right analogy to think about it. We have seen all shapes of liberalism and how it plays out in the real world. Without makeup, with makeup on, we had our expectation towards liberalism, especially in the 90s and early 2000s. Now we see it when it's a bit worn down, without makeup in day-to-day life, then it doesn't look so appealing anymore. So when it comes to, again, the sexiness topic and lovable, I think sexy is a theory that is not practiced out. It's an utopian, idealistic realm of ideas or set of values. But what liberalism is, for example, as a real-world political institution and political theory that is worked out and applied in the world, it is something that is like a long-term relationship that we have with the idea. And then we don't have to ask ourselves, is this sexy or not? But is it lovable or not? And is it lovable? That really depends on where we are.
I know it. Our task is how to make liberalism sexy again. And if I take your analogy, which is actually quite dangerous, we're walking on very thin ice here, is that, okay, so if you want to make a relationship sexy, perhaps you should change your partner or have a paramour. So is it possible with the liberalism?
No, I would not say you should make your partner sexy. Like you.
If you claim that your long-term partner is not sexy, mine is, might be yours. I know.
I will not get into that trap. You can't bait me in there.
No, but I'm serious.
Robert Nozick talks very famously about love, and that love is not about the eros, the passionate dimension. That maybe is a little bit of a role in it. But it's about the common appreciation, the love, right?
Maybe you should explain that he's like a libertarian thinker, not like the writer of the romantic books, right? Obviously.
But I think he had a quite successful love life. But anyways, Robert Nozick says, like, okay, love is this particular concept that is not necessarily tied to sexiness. And I think like liberalism doesn't have to be sexy because liberalism has succeeded. People all over the world are more liberal than ever before. Maybe they don't label themselves liberals. Maybe they don't vote for liberal parties. But liberal is the dominant morality of our time. More people than ever are liberal. I would go as far as saying that in most of the countries that we are living in, people have as their dominant set of moral values, liberal values. They are not fundamentally Christian integralists, like they might be LARPing as Christians, but their day-to-day morality is very close to the values of personal freedom, acceptance of something like human rights, respect for fairness and reciprocity, democratic decision-making, and the like. So the day-to-day reality of most people is that they are liberal. So we are in a deep relationship with liberalism as human societies, so we don't need to make liberalism sexy. What we need to make it is that it stays in this relationship with people, because people are disappointed currently, and that's why we see the rise of illiberalism, because people are disappointed of this relationship that they have with this abstract political theory that is actually not abstract but played out in the real world.
Right. So how I get what you're saying is actually we should not try to make liberalism sexy, but the world more liberal. But is success sexy? So you are saying, okay, actually it is liberalism, maybe not sexy as such, but it's successful. So maybe it's about power, a power of defining reality. Is it your point?
Again, like I just say, like sexy is not maybe the overall goal of global liberalism, but to stay on top of things. And the initial success that liberalism had in its young history, it's only 200 years old, until today, it maybe suffers from its own success. It has become intellectually dead to a certain degree? Academically, I always ask my colleagues and my students, what are some of the most relevant philosophical thinkers of liberalism since John Rawls?
I mean, still alive, you mean? Still
Yeah,
alive.
still alive.
Well, not, yeah. Which names?
Yeah, I'm looking forward. Maybe you can provide me. You
Maybe
have a
you.
podcast.
Maybe you.
You invite people. You talk to people. What are the most interesting, relevant liberal thinkers that have pushed forward the political theory? We are still talking about John Stuart Mill, Adam Smith, John Rawls. That's kind of the last seminal points. Intellectually, it has been dead. Political leaders that consider themselves liberals and push it forward. A lot of people still refer to people such as Margaret Thatcher or like whatever, Ronald Reagan, whether we consider them liberals or not, up for a different debate. But like, where are the leaders of this particular movement? And I think we have stalled out as an intellectual and political tradition in the last couple of years because we were so successful. Kind of the Fukuyama story. Well, it's the end of history. The world will become more liberal eventually and like evidently, but then we don't have to put in the effort like in a relationship. If we know we stay with our partners for the next couple of years, we don't put in the effort. I would certainly not do that, but people don't put the effort in, and that's what liberalism did. It doesn't put the effort in, and I think that's why we have panels on the topic of how to make us sexy again. But if you know a thing or two about relationships, when things are degrading, like putting up the new makeup doesn't help, you know? So you have to do some fundamental changes.
Yeah, God is dead, Marx is dead, and I myself think not quite well, right? That's what you're saying. Well, Jesus Christ is dead for a long time. It's still quite relevant, right? So maybe you don't need like reinventing the wheel every time now and then. Okay, but let's get maybe just a little bit serious. I think there are you being based in UK, right? So at least studying there and still being active intellectually. I think it's also quite visible at other universities. It's not. You don't really see the thousands of young liberals, crowding and marching and discussing. You rather see that sort of like a new left, the post-colonial discourse, in economics as well, right? You've got this new economic theory. What makes the left, especially in this very radical version, so attractive for the young? Is it just that it is opposing the mainstream? Is it offering this utopian version of reality? Or do you think there's something more significant, something that is more close to that people really need, this sort of strong emotions and the strong convictions? And the liberalism is really boring. It's not offering them that.
Yeah, I think, of course, the first part is for sure that liberalism is the status quo, and nothing is more boring than the status quo, right? So that's, I talked about it. I think that's one part. The second part is, I think that identity plays a bigger and bigger role in contemporary society, and liberalism always struggles with the topic of identity. So if you look at the topics such as post-colonialism, critical theory, a lot of the stuff that Jascha Monk was talking about yesterday, these are questions of identity. And I think those are the issues that liberals have historically underrated. That's why Francis Fukuyama at one point then wrote a book on only identity, where he says, like, basically, yeah, we should put that on our radar. But at that point, it was already quite late in the process. So again, we are like catching up with a development that was going on. And I think liberals have a lot to say about the topic of identity, but they have completely missed that we have a new realignment in politics that is not about capitalism versus socialism anymore. That's kind of the boomer politics, like the boomer alignment of how we thought about the world. It's not the fundamental economic battle anymore. What we see in politics now, and that what excites young people, that what excites actually many people all around the world, is that we are in a moment of time where all of politics is on the issue of identity. Are we more cosmopolitan liberals for the open society, or are we more closed off? Identity based on, for example, ethnicity, race, gender, or whatever it is. And that's the other pole of that debate. And here people fall on different camps. And I'm not so pessimistic that most people are identitarians on both sides, either left identitarians or right identitarians against the liberals. Most young people are liberals by their status quo. They have been raised in a liberal framework, and they are committed to liberal morality. But they are disappointed by liberals that we don't have much to say about the issues of migration or the issues of identity in a modern world where old cards of identity such as religion, such as association, such as other things that are important are not addressed by this particular theory.
And do you think they should be addressed, or do you think the way it's addressing liberalism, addressing those issues is just not very interesting or very relevant, or that we are trapped sort of between this new wave of populist right, which is very communitarian in a sense, or finding an enemy, a common enemy, like a Trumpian politics. On the other hand, you've got this identitarian politics, which is all, you know, the whole issue of problem with the cancel culture, of sort of like this minority defining themselves, and not everyone is catching up. I think also liberals are not catching up, right, with many of those issues. And they're blackmailed by the lefts on one hand, and on the other hand, they try to oppose the right. And it seems they fail on both fronts, one politically and the other one ideologically.
Yeah, I think liberalism doesn't struggle to address it. I mean, as I said before, like when you can raise many criticisms of liberalism, but certainly not that the theory has like holes in it. I mean, it's a very robust intellectual canon. I think it's more sociologically that we don't engage with certain groups that we should be engaging with. I think I always take feminism as a core example here. Like, the early stages of feminism was determined by liberals, like Harriet Taylor Mill, Mary Wollstonecraft. These were feminists out of the liberal tradition, and they came out of it because one of the core values of liberalism is skepticism about power. And nowadays, when we look at feminist circles, there are very few classical liberals or liberals within them. It's not because we abandoned feminism as a cause, it's more sociologically liberals were diving out of that discourse and then left it to the left in that case. And similarly, when it comes to issues such as post-colonialism or intersectionality, or all the topics that are on the table, what people at universities, and universities are kind of these experimental clusters where all the hip ideas are discussed before they like trickle down into mainstream, right? And that's where we are not present, but out of sociological reasons. We say, oh, like this is all stuff that we don't want to engage in, but we can. There are spaces where we can. Like, there are injustices out of post-colonial nature that we could address from a liberal lens, where the dominant lens is maybe through rights violations or detraction of freedom rather than the dimension of a Foucauldian power, but we can address. We have the toolkit. Sociologically, we don't do it, and I think that's where I'm disappointed. And then we don't like develop a new cluster or new class of liberal thinkers that could address with that audience.
Oh, it's really getting romantic, but it's as you see.
Fitting the theme. Fitting
right.
the theme.
Well, but we can still hear each other, and we can even see what's the topic of this discussion. And I can see the timer, and it's only 3 minutes left for us. So maybe to close this our conversation. Well, I do hope that at some point we're gonna see each other again, but. And you don't fall asleep, especially. So if we can get the lights back, that would be great. But in the meantime, in this darkness, how do we bring light, enlightenment? Thank you. Well, turn on. Right. So how do we turn liberalism on?
Like that's. You say like you have 2 minutes, and now tell me how to save liberalism from itself. I mean, and also that's way above my pay grade. I mean, you know, like it's a difficult project. I think, first of all, liberalism has to like recognize that it is the status quo. And maybe if there's one message that I hammered home in these last couple of minutes, it is really like, don't be not hopeful. Like, liberalism has succeeded. Like, it's one in most societies the dominant morality.
So be hopeful, you mean?
No.
No.
Be respectful of what we achieved. Okay, liberalism is as a way of life. Something that has achieved a lot. Most people have nowadays liberalism as their most dominant political, like morality, I would say even, okay, as their way of life. They are liberals, okay? But in terms of the intellectual movement, we get counter clashes all the time, and we should be prepared for that or even be flattered by that. The rise of populism, the rise of geopolitics, these are two things that are distinctively illiberal. Viktor Orban's populism is called illiberal democracy. I mean, how much more flattering can you give to an ideology to say, we come with a counter-ideology because you are the status quo? So now liberalism has to finally understand that for 200 years, it has been the progressive movement at the fringes, and it has always fought for stuff. Now it has become more status quo. It is in a committed relationship with most human societies, and then we behave differently than when we are the aggressive person who wants to win people over. So we have to shift our tonality and adjust to that particular role. How to do all of that, that's a million-dollar question. But one of the things that we could do is to finally recognize that for ourselves that we have become lazy in our own relationship with the people and didn't put enough effort intellectually, politically. We didn't deliver properly, for example, politically, and that we need to do that better. And maybe just to close that off, what I mean with the delivery issue, in every relationship, at one point, you want to deliver to your partner. That becomes very physical now, but you want to deliver in that relationship. And liberalism has disappointed now because it was in the position to disappoint, because it was tried out, and we are still having it in many societies. But what we need to get better is at this delivery. And that's why we need something like state capacity discussions where we say, what does it mean to be a good liberal politician? What does it mean to be a good liberal bureaucrat? What does it mean to be a good liberal think tank? And that's something that we haven't done in the last 30 or 40 years, I must say, because the innovation on that front is not up to par, I would say. And that caused a lot of the problems that we see in our relationship right now. Not in ours, but...
Right, so get out to the world, be a liberal, and make love. Thank you so much. Sven, Gerst, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, guys. But don't leave the room yet. We have Ricardo back on the stage.
You start.
All right, so we are promised some prizes, but there is no game without effort, and we're going to have fun. Not that we didn't have fun before, right? We will need, we're going to have some political questionnaires. How much do you know about European Union? What a fascinating subject.
And how much do you know about Łódź and Freedom Games? But
Much better. But for that, we're going to need a volunteer. Don't be shy.
Volunteer, here we go.
All right, we have a volunteer.
Come on in.
Come in. So, come.
Here?
Yeah, come to the stage.
And then you'll come to me. You need a microphone, right?
Yeah. All right, dear volunteer, what is your name?
Andrew.
All right. So, what do you do for a living?
I'm a lawyer.
I don't think I say if people love you, but how much do you know about the European Union?
I think quite enough.
Wow, that's why we have this volunteer. All right, Ricardo, take it away.
Very good. So to win 2 prizes, because we're very generous, and we have a book, and we were talking about the classics, the Liberal Canon, which is a European Liberal Forum production, and Renewing Europe, because Europe, it is a liberal project. So the European Union has a motto. It reads, united in diversity, united in democracy, united for Bartosz Kurek,
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
and united for a cool flag and awesome anthem. So my question to you is, from these 4 ones...
Look, Ricardo was there. He was in the Olympics.
Try
with
not-
Polish team.
Try not to get try to read too much on the background image here. But which one is correct? And if you can ask for a lifeline from the audience.
I mean, the photos strongly suggest the right answer, so I'm gonna choose A, united in diversity.
And united in diversity it is.
Bravo.
So a round of applause for him. Very good. He knows this stuff. So, the European Union has won a Nobel Prize. Can you tell us if it was for patience in dealing with Jaroslaw Kaczynski?
Still haven't achieved that, so no prize for that.
Exasperation in dealing with Viktor Orban, and we have Hungarian friends in the audience. Solidarity with Ukraine, or contribution towards peace and reconciliation. Before you answer,
That's a hard one.
then again, if the audience wants to jump in, what do you think it's the correct one?
I think this is the last one.
It is
towards-
contribution towards peace and reconciliation. Very good.
Bravo.
Well done. Okay, the last one. What is the geographical center of the European Union? This is after the United Kingdom left, unfortunately. Let's hope our friends from across the channel come in quick. And naturally, before the expansion, something that the European Liberal Forum, and I see the executive director right there, something that we work about a lot, about expansion and continuing the European Union project. So, our question to you is, it's a bank of a river in Frankfurt, in Hanau. Is it a water fountain in the middle of Erlangen in Nuremberg? it is a field outside Gannheim near Würzburg, or it is whatever Ursula von der Leyen is.
Well,
So I'm
that's the geopolitical center of Europe, but you were asking about geographical, right?
Well, yes, let's try to be nice to the President of the European Commission. So, again, give us your best shot. What do you think is
If
the
I'm
correct
allowed,
answer?
I'd like to use my lifeline right now and ask
Yes.
the audience.
All right, please raise your hand. Which one thinks is the first one? The bank of a river? No one.
I think they don't know. I
A
don't know.
water fountain in the middle of Erlange? No one. Whatever Ursula von der Leyen is? No one believes in that. Oh, no, there's a hand right there.
Okay.
That's a political answer right there. And of course, you know it already, but please say it. It's a field outside Gannheim.
And that's the one.
So
Okay.
this was an amazing performance for him. So I'm going to ask, please, to give a round of applause and a couple of
Andrzej.
gifts from the European Liberal Forum. Thank you so much. Now I have two microphones, so it's
Yeah.
always stereo. All right, so with that, let's go to the second game. And the second game, we're going to need another volunteer. And this is about Łódź and the magnificent Freedom Games. I've been very, very privileged to be here for my fourth year right now. It's amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Leszek. But we need a volunteer. So please, someone step up, someone that knows about Łódź.
And Freedom Games,
Come on,
which
here
are
we
so
go.
tied together.
Here we go.
You don't have to live here.
There's
Yeah?
one. There you go.
Come,
Come on
come.
down, contestant. Contester? Is that Polish? Maybe? No. All right, come here.
You have a mic.
Join me.
Yeah.
So actually, we're going to start by his pin. What is your pin about?
It's the University.
Talk to my
Sorry, University of Łódź. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So someone that knows about Łódź. So you won already. For you, we have this Cards Against Liberals, which is
I already have one,
you
but
already have one more.
Oh no.
We'll
Okay.
someone wants to get one.
We'll find something.
I'll get you a great book published by Liberté, perhaps.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Your motivation is already. So tell us your name.
Adrian.
Adrian. Okay. What do you do apart from studying? Are you a political activist?
Yes, some kind of. I'm the treasurer of Nowoczesna Youth.
Oh.
So,
Oh.
yeah.
Do you know that lady over there?
Yes, of course, my great colleague. Yeah.
Very good.
Briefly,
So-
yeah, of course.
Stop dating the two of you. Sex in about liberalism. So I'm going to throw you to Leszek, and Leszek, please take it away.
Right. So this is tricky for everyone. How many rivers are in Łódź?
19.
An epidemic of beavers build dams that move the rivers.
So this is actually a question of mine because I've been in Łódź many times, and I see that the logo, it's a boat.
Yeah,
So
and we have some
we're gonna
problems with
try to
beavers.
get there.
Recently. There are 10 rivers. There are 7 rivers. There are no rivers. Wow, visible rivers.
So someone is already saying, yeah. there are a
Someone
couple
is saying,
of
yeah. Yeah. But
So the
let's-
right
let's
answer?
see
I
what's the
mean-
right answer.
There is no right answer because there are 19 of them. But the closest answer is 10, so I'm gonna say 10.
Well, historically there were 7.
7 rivers.
I know. Well.
Yeah.
So it is contested answer, but yeah, I mean, historically, well, 7 rivers, but obviously we can count there more rivers. But anyway, I think we can accept 19.
You're going to win anyway.
Now there is one. Now there is one which is less contested. When was the first edition of Freedom Games? Was it 2025?
That's it.
Well,
Yeah,
it is.
definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Or
sorry,
was
sorry.
it? Yeah. You can see the borders of ours moving out. Well, yes.
You can actually see that on the map.
You
Yeah.
can see the Łódź as well, of course, and issue 1. It was 1980. Or was it 2014? Or 2016? That's a difficult one.
Dun, 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 dun,
I
dun,
Maybe
dun,
people
dun,
know.
dun.
Maybe you can help.
Okay,
Which
I
one?
have 14, right? Okay. Yeah, so
So?
I'm gonna say 14.
Yes, it was 2014. This 11th edition of Freedom Games. Look how we changed. Very few people then. All right. And the last one. How many people on average on 3 days visit Freedom Games? Only Jażdżewski shows up. It was Ricardo's idea, right? Okay. 1 million rights, maybe
would be nice.
5,000
Seems about right.
or 2,500. Well, okay, that's me looking great.
Indeed.
I mean, I would really like for it to be 1 million.
Right.
But I believe that it's more like 5,000 or maybe 2. Okay.
Maybe you can help him. What do you think? I mean, okay, it's a tricky one
1.5, really?
because it's really like it was different every year, but let's say recently, which one do you think is right?
Yeah. So. Yeah.
So
Okay.
it
so
is your call. It is your call.
yeah, 2,500.
And that's the right answer because the 5,000 is our goal for the next year. No, actually, it's 10,000. All right. Wow. Okay. All right. Thank you. So this we're going to give to whoever needs it. And you can choose one book from the Liberté Foundation shop upstairs. Is it right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much and congratulations.
All right, so a round of applause for him.
Yeah, Adrian, thank you. And we've got our questions and short quiz out, and we have a winner. So now I would introduce Ricardo on the stage, but he's already on the stage, so I will move away. But Ricardo now is going to talk with Tamas Toplak from ELF, and Zoltán Ranschburg from Republikon Institute from Hungary, already mentioned, and also the recently elected MP from Nowoczesna to Polish Sejm, Aleksandra. So now they're going to make liberalism sexy. I'm going to move out, and you please take the floor.
Too many microphones for us?
And very cool. And thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for coming and being here and staying for this second session. We're going to go a little more into solutions. I already introduced myself, and it's my pleasure to bring you the panel. Let's start by my left. So we have Zoltán Ranschburg. And Zoltán, you are the senior analyst of independent Budapest-based think tank Republikon Institute. Then in the middle, we are very happy to be joined by Aleksandra. She was, as Leszek mentioned, elected to the parliament. Thank you. Congratulations so much for that. From Krakow 2.
Yes,
Got that right?
exactly.
Very good. And you're a member of Nowoczesna and president of Nowoczesna Youth. And then to my left, my dear friend Thomas Toplak. He's the head of communications at the European Liberal Forum, a former director of communications at Momentum Movement, the Liberal Party in Hungary. So we have a little bit of Hungary and Poland and Portugal. So just to balance the thing in the middle of Europe. So let's start. And let's start with some concepts. Is liberalism sexy again? Was it ever sexy? And if it's not, how can we make it more appealing? I'll tell you my opinion really quickly. I think that, yes, we need to repackage things a little bit. And we need to have people, again, like Sven was saying, and very correctly so in my opinion, look at us with fresh eyes. But my guests are the ones that are going to go into it. And I'll start with you, Aleksandra. So please tell us a little bit about this and what is your concept of sexy liberalism, more appealing liberalism.
Yes, sure, thank you. So I think the word sexy would suggest something brand new and this shiny box that we should put liberalism in. And I think we should definitely find a way to make liberalism more appealing or maybe more suitable for times we live in. But I think those values like freedom and economical and personal freedom or creating equal opportunities, those are timeless values. But I do think that in times we live in where we can observe rise of popularity of populist and extremist parties, we do have to find a way to gather people around liberalism, because those parties, the far-right parties, the populist parties, they very easily create this idea of future, and they benefit from those fears that a lot of people have because of the world we live in. And I think they just gather people around this false sense of security and false sense of protection that they promise. So I think liberalism has to find a way to connect to people more and to to gather people around the key objective of just providing a decent future for everyone, where the rule of law is obeyed and where we have equal opportunities. So I guess it's not really about putting liberalism into a new shiny box, but just finding a way to convince people that what the box contains, which is liberalism, is going to provide them with a good future.
That's a tremendous point, and Sven went to it, and I will went to it also, because I am a reader of the classics. So again, Sven was saying, well, we keep going back to John Stuart Mill or Locke or Hobbes, and we gravitate. So in your opinion, and someone that is fresh to this game, do we need to repackage also that thinking, that teaching, and not go to the well over and over and over like Sven was saying? What is your take on that?
So I think we have to find some kind of balance between that. So I guess those fundamentals of liberalism, they don't need to be reinvented again, but I think it's about communicating them maybe better. I think liberals are not the best in maybe connecting to people and maybe answering their questions about the future. And I think it's about maybe, I think my colleagues will probably expand on that, but I think it's important to find a way to, I guess if you're trying to communicate anything to a potential voters or potential person, you should answer the question, why should it be important for that person? And I think we sometimes struggle with it. We struggle to find that personal connection with voters, and I think liberals tend to talk about maybe abstract ideas without providing some tangible proof. Why should economical and personal freedom matter to me?
Very good, and we're going to get into that later on, about that connection. But I keep coming back to the same question, which is, should we use the corn seller example of John Stuart Mill or the Leviathan from Hobbes, or it gets to a point that we have to come up with new stories? And we'll get to that. Tamas, from your experience in campaigning, and you already mentioned you were involved with Momentum in Hungary, and dealing with voters, how do you feel this perception of liberalism, and this perception then how much you think is grounded in the reality that's around us?
Welcome everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the question. Indeed, in the last for 4 years I've been doing communication for the Liberal Party in Hungary. So I did a lot of campaigning on the street, and actually it was very interesting to have these conversations with people who are not necessarily political, not necessarily liberal, but my experience was that actually there is not really a good understanding what is liberal, what is a liberal policy, what are liberal values. And actually it made me realize that, and surprisingly, like with the far right, liberal parties have a very surprisingly big overlap in the voter base with the far right, because in these conversations I realized that actually there are liberal values that are people associate with actually the far right parties. I grew up in the Hungarian countryside in a very conservative environment. Actually, most of my family members are devoted Fidesz voters and Orban believers. And then actually when I have these kind of conversations, okay, where do you work in Brussels? And the European Liberal Forum, and liberal, okay. But then when they start talking about policies and how they see the world, and then they talk about economic freedom and job security, I can actually very easily point out that, but actually what you're talking about are liberal values, liberal policies, liberal recommendations. So I think there is a big issue when it comes to liberalism, to how to actually explain what is liberalism, what are our core values, what are our policy recommendations, because voters are not really aware of it. And actually many times I feel that even liberal politicians and policymakers and activists are not necessarily aware of it.
Very good. You brought up a very interesting point, and that is, if people, and Sven also mentioned that, if we swim into liberal waters, we don't see the liberalism is even there, but it's there every day. And you talk with your family and you talk with your friends and you explain actually what you're describing are liberal policies. Then where is the disconnect? It's because people are just stubborn. It's because there's too much propaganda coming from the other side and messing things up.
Well, I think there are many things. For sure in Hungary it's propaganda as well. Bad experiences regarding liberal policies from the past. And actually also I want to connect to Sven's panel that liberalism is the status quo. This is the mainstream ideology that we have, and I think many times liberal politicians, liberal thinkers take it as granted, and many times I think it's we act as the new religion. In a way that if you think differently, if you challenge this status quo, then you are not equal to us because you don't believe in those very fundamental human rights, democracy. So it's a very interesting conversation. We kind of close off this conversation when someone is challenging liberalism in a way. So I think we have to change this kind of attitude. On the other hand, I think it's also topical. Many times we got this criticism that liberals are kind of detached of reality. We don't really talk about issues that people care about, and we don't have answers to those issues. And actually, I think it's not true. I mean, we have a lot of answers. We are great thinkers, or at least we think like that. But we don't deal with those issues. We live in a time when people have a lot of insecurities about the future, about financial security, about housing, and I don't think it's really in the priority of liberal political communication, those issues. So I think we have to turn a little bit to a more human-centered, more people-centered liberalism and policy making when we talk about liberal values.
And we're going to get into that also. I'll editorialize here just a little bit as a moderator. There is some data that show that there's also this tendency to be contrarian, but I'm much more worried with that, and I share this worry with the audience and with you as a political scientist. In Portugal, we had the growth of an extreme right-wing party. And most of the votes of this party comes from youth. And then when you confront them, as you were saying, it's like, oh, actually, those are liberal values, so you're voting against your own interests. There's a little bit of an overshadow of, yeah, but I want to try something different. I want to try an authoritarian this time. That is a reality. Please keep that in mind. Zoltán, let's talk with you. And Tamas was saying that sometimes you have a very tough environment to talk about liberalism and even to define it. But still on that, please tell us, and you work with Republikon in Budapest, tell us this experience of you trying to do this in a place like Hungary in such a challenging environment.
Oh, yes, it's on. Well, thank you very much for having me today with all this great fellow panelists, and thank you, Ricardo, for your question. Although I must say it's really not good to be the fourth speaker after three such great speakers.
I'll stop complaining.
Especially because when Sven was on the stage and was speaking, I was thinking, oh, that's exactly what I wanted to say about this. And then when Aleksandra spoke, I thought, oh, that's exactly what I wanted to say. And I had the same feelings about Tamas's contribution as well. That we are all talking about the same thing. Of course, it's not a coincidence. But when you first put the question, should we make, or is there a need to make liberalism sexy again? I was actually really grateful to you that you asked this question first and not how we should do that. Because I very much agree with everyone else who spoke before me that liberalism is an abstract theory, an abstract concept, and it's really, really tough to make an abstract concept sexy. I never thought of it as such. Actually, I wouldn't say that it was ever sexy in the classical meaning. I'm a political analyst. So probably you allow me if I take a more hands-on political approach to the topic, where I can see the appeal of liberalism is through liberal ideas and liberal values, and the actual policies and measures and political approaches that can be derived from those values and principles. And those can actually be made, well, not necessarily sexy, but attractive, because these are like the freedom of speech, the freedom of the market, the protection of minority rights. These are these are values that are fundamentally rooted in the liberal tradition. So what I believe, although again, I wanted to use the word sexy again, although I still don't really like the term, because I feel that these values and these principles are so deeply built into the very fabric of our societies in the 21st century that when we say they are sexy, it sounds as if we were saying that oxygen is sexy. I mean, there is this.
Oh, it is. Come on now.
It is, okay.
Try to be underwater and then think that thought again.
And as Tamas said before, it's taken for granted. It's just there that we have all these rights, all these civil liberties, that we can live our lives as in the way we can, especially in the global north in the 21st century. So I think we are very privileged people to have actually this forum and talk about liberalism. But I think it's the important thing is not to talk about liberalism itself, but to make sure that people realize that those principles, those values that they value so much, that are so important to them, are fundamentally rooted in the liberal tradition, and it's only liberal political actors or those political actors who claim to be liberal, at least to a certain extent, are the only guarantee for the protection of these values and ideas, especially in times when they are so much under challenge.
And on that, please give us an example of how you do that in Budapest with that hands-on approach on politics.
Yeah, it's well. This is my biggest challenge today, probably to come up with a positive example from Hungary about liberalism. It's not easy, although if you take a step back and you're not looking or not trying to look for one specific liberal political actor that is successful, because we saw actually that even in the case of Momentum, which was the only party that openly declared itself as liberal in like 20 or 15 years in Hungarian politics, because the term liberal has become so much of a swear word that political parties don't even dare to label themselves as such, even if they are liberal. So Momentum wasn't really successful, and we can't really see their success. But if I want to have a very positive approach, I would take a step back and I would check whether there is support for political forces that are going definitely against the current illiberal regime, regardless of how these political forces label themselves. And now we can see the rise of a new political movement in Hungary. There are many doubts about it at the moment. We really can't see where it will be ending up. However, simply the fact that a brand new political force has been able to gather large support in a very short period of time shows that there are many people who would do anything in their capacities to vote something that is not Orbán's illiberal regime.
I'm going to add 2 data points also. Spain and Portugal, where liberalism was also a forbidden word for historical reasons and religious reasons. I'm not going to get into that. But there was a market, because when we first had a political party called Ciudadanos in Spain, it got a very good voting total, and then they committed a couple of mistakes, and now they're almost gone. But that is not here or there. And also in Portugal, there's a new liberal party, and also the market is there. So there is a market for those people. Now, I'm going to do a second round with them, but please think of a question that you would like to ask the panel. It has to be short, but think about something that you would like to challenge them with, okay? And then I'll come to you after or next. So, solutions. Let's try to solve the problems of unicorns and rhinoceros. And I'll continue with you, Zoltán. You mentioned in private conversations that you are particularly keen on or focused on the question of reinstating the status of the term liberalism. So that forbidden word where we need to recover that and, again, make it sexy, or if you don't feel comfortable, appealing. Please get a little bit into that.
Well, actually, this is quite a natural continuation of the thought that I was presenting just 2 minutes ago. That I believe that people should be made at least able to comprehend the underlying liberal nature of those values that really define our contemporary societies. And let me tell you just a couple of examples. Like if we are talking about having the rights to have control over our own bodies, to think that the state should interfere with the free market as little as possible. These are basic liberal values. It's very interesting. Republikon Institute last year created a study. Did research from which we wrote a study on different liberalisms in Hungary, like how liberals are define themselves. And it was very interesting to see that there were many people who defined themselves as liberals, but didn't agree with practically any liberal statement or liberal idea. And there were many, many people who didn't define themselves as liberals, but agreed with either economic or, well, we categorize it as cultural liberal issues. So I believe that there is a deep misunderstanding in the general population of what constitutes liberalism. And I'm not trying to give out political slogans now, because I'm not a political campaigner or not a political communicator, but I can virtually hear in my ears when you know a liberal political actor talks to the public and says that, do you believe that you should have checks and balances to control the power of the government? If you agree with this, at least partly, you're liberal. Do you believe that you should have your own right to decide about your own body, about your own health, or should there be limitations to that by the state? If you believe in that, well, congratulations, you're at least a bit liberal. So these are issues that that people should understand, that these are the actual manifestations of what liberalism, an otherwise abstract concept, can manifest in.
Very good. I may come back to you if we don't have any questions from the audience, which I hope we have. But Aleksandra, you were mentioning on a first go around about the strength of developing emotional connections with your voters and actually with success, because you have success to show. So also please tell us a little bit about that. How does it happen? How can you make it happen?
So I think it's about making those personal stories and maybe giving examples of why personal freedom should matter. But I also think it's about creating a community of people. So I think in a way to make liberalism sexy, it's also important to make it, I guess, accessible and I want to say inclusive, and what I mean by that is that it's important to invite people to the table who may not align 100% with our views. So, for example, I'm invited to similar events, maybe just smaller ones, and usually there's going to be a comment or two how I'm not liberal enough to be there. And I think if we have that attitude that only certain people are worthy to be invited to that table, then we're not really doing liberalism any favor, because we're only, you know, we're gatekeeping, to put it in a way that I guess young people say, with liberalism. And I think it's not a good thing to do if we want to make it a popular ideology. But also I think it's important to I understand that the political landscape in Poland might be disappointing to many people, but I think it's really important to also work with organizations and youth organizations and just foundations who support liberalism and who want to educate people about it. Because my goal as also a president of a youth branch of a party is to give provide, maybe provide is not a good word, but just allow members of our organization to grow on their own, because those are young people with liberal values and they're going to want to be elected to their local government, local parliaments, or maybe to the parliament. And I think it's really important for them to have those skills, how to run in elections. And I think, so I took part in workshops and events that had the European Liberal Forum logo on them. And I think it's really helped me to grow as a person, as a politician. And I think it's also important to focus on that, on growing communities, liberal communities, because political parties often come from or they are built around people who knew each other from youth organization or from other projects like that. So I think that is important. And also, like I've mentioned before, when campaigning, just trying to make that personal connection and explaining to the person why should it matter and how does my everyday life will change if we have a populist party in government.
I was going to save this for last with Aleksandra, but since you mentioned with the European Liberal Forum, she just won the prize of the Rising Star of Liberals from European Liberal Forum. So just for that, please, a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Very
She's
nice
a
of you to
rising
mention
star.
that.
Very good. I may come back to you also about purity tests, but now I will move to Tamas, because following what Aleksandra was saying, and then you working in the European Liberal Forum and particularly in communication, how then we scale up this idea of this connection and then have this people-centered liberalism?
Yes. Actually, I just want to echo what Zoltán said in the beginning, that I'm not sure that we have to make an ideology sexy or liberalism sexy. I think what we have to do is have a vision of the future and have a comprehensive narrative of how we want to achieve that. We have to deliver answers to people's problems. And when we have those answers, then I think people will start to think that, okay, maybe liberalism is actually the answer to our issues. We have a lot of challenges. The Friedrich Neumann Foundation actually had a new publication on Europe, Great Challenges of Europe 2050. And I think it's a very, very interesting publication on how Europe will look like in 25 years. It's not a nice read, to be honest. It's a very pessimistic in a way, with a lot of challenges. Not this one. Not this one. We have a lot of challenges. Just to name one, in 2050, there will be more people over 65 than under 15 years in Europe, which brings a lot of challenges to the healthcare system, the social security, to political thinking. Like if we have a very old population, is it going to be shifting towards conservative ideology? Is it how liberalism will work in society like that? How workforce will look like in 25 years, which is not crazy far away from us. And these are challenges that maybe they are not like in the daily conversation, but it's in the people's minds, and it's definitely in the mind of the far right. And I think this is a very significant difference between liberal politicians and then at least what I see, for example, in Hungary, that we are not really playing in the same field. Viktor Orban thinks about the destiny of Europe in 50 years, in 25 years, in 30 years, and then we are talking about freedom of media. Both are actually very important things, but they are not compatible because we are not playing the same field. And so the point is that I think this kind of intellectual work is missing from liberalism, and this is what actually we try to do with the European Liberal Forum and with some other liberal organizations in Brussels, also with the Friedrich Neumann Foundation and the Renew Europe Group and other party, to start this kind of thinking of the future, how Europe will be in 2050, what is our vision, what is the liberal vision of Europe in 2050, and build a narrative around it. What is a narrative? This narrative is basically this comprehensive story that kind of explains why we are doing certain things. When we say we need media freedom, when we say we need I don't know,
LGBTQ rights, abortion rights.
Yeah, but also like in economy, like why do we need the green transition? Why do we need to invest in European industries? These are all questions that now all there, but actually there is no overarching narrative that explains, even for us, but also for the voters, why we are doing this in liberal politics. So I think this is a very important first step to have a common vision, a common liberal narrative that explains why we do what we are doing. And this is not only good for for the voters to understand what is liberal policy, but it also gives a group identity for liberals. We are so different. We have conservative liberals, we have left-wing liberals, but we have to find the common ground. What are the basic liberal values that connects us? What are these identity? What's the liberal identity that connects party members, politicians? And if we have that, then we can be more credible and trustworthy also in front of the voters.
Very good. Now, as my privilege as moderator, I'm going to do two plugins. One is, and you can just walk by the tables with the European Liberal Forum. There is a work done which is European Liberalism for the 21st Century. So, if you want to continue on that conversation, the other one is actually about the age gap. And Leszek and I had a very interesting conversation on one of our podcasts, because Leszek has the experience of participating in groups with different people at different ages. So please listen to that podcast. Pretty soon we're going to put the QR code so that you can follow. So now it's your turn. Any question? Just make it snappy, please. Oh, there's one there in the middle. All right. Oh, here's
Give me this one. Okay. So who goes first? Let me go up.
For time, I'm going to take like 3
Yes,
questions.
okay.
There's another one up there.
Pass the mic.
Thanks. Tamas. I have a question. The first thing, sexiness is not only body, but also mind. Yeah? Okay. Have one question. If we want to fall in love in somebody, before the love, the deep dive is sexiness. That reason, that question is very important for us, because we need new generation of people, of lovers for liberalism. This is my question. What do you think about this? Because our colleague said
Sven,
about
yeah.
Sven, sorry. Yeah.
It's okay.
Talk only about the deep love. We talk about the first look, the sexiness. Sexiness is not the same. It's just a beginning of love. Thanks.
No, thank you. That's a great question. And I'll make a collection. Anyone in particular, or just anyone can pick it up? Tamas. Anyone will pick it up, or someone in particular? All right, good. Now we have one question over there. Do you prefer to go right away or have a series of questions? All right, then right over there. You want to come down? Oh, the microphone is coming to you. The microphone's coming to you. It's pass the baton kind of thing. In the Olympics, we just had it.
Aleksandra from Reform Institute. I have a question. Maybe it's a bit more difficult, because not only about liberalism, but about liberal institutions. So how to make them sexy? Because what we see in Poland, at least this is what I feel, is that even if you throw out illiberal politicians, the impact on how the institution function it actually stays with them. And I'm not exactly sure that I would call how today the new government runs how it works. I would call this the key or the golden standard of liberalism. And maybe I would also like you to define what you actually understand by liberalism or liberal institutions, because by the end of the day, that also allows you to kind of sell the sexiness. Because maybe if we look at some good examples of liberalism which became sexy over the last few years, I would say that maybe Yes in My Backyard movement was kind of sexy. And if you think about it, why? It's because it was disruptive, but in a liberal way. So you have competition, you have rules, so you say the rules don't work, they are open, they should be open, and it's liberal, it's disruptive, it opens a way forward. But this is an example of liberal institutions, liberal narrative, which can be sexy. So the question for you would be, what would you call the key thing for liberal institutions, and how you can make liberal institutions
sorry, can you specify what you mean by institution?
Yeah, overall, so basically how we have decision-making, how the decision-making is happening, so that we don't have Prime Minister just going out and saying, oh, it's going to be this way or that way, or how the property rights are protected, that you have rules which are open to competitions, which are rule-based. So maybe you have other definition, would be interesting to hear what you actually mean when you say liberalism in your day-to-day life, in day-to-day policies. Thank you.
Very good. I'm going to start with Tamas, then the answers for Tamas with a little data point. And you have to believe me on this. There are studies that show that if people trying to meet someone online, there are two ways to do it. Either you go to Tinder or you go to some website where you have all the description. I like long walks, I like long dinners. The one that has more success is Tinder. Why? Because you see immediately the person and you immediately get interested. It's like, ooh. While if you go and read and it's like, ugh, boring, and I don't like long walks by the beach. But still, let's answer. Well, I'm from Portugal. I love long walks by the beach. But let's answer that one, and then we'll go to the institutions one. So, who wants to pick up is that first moment of just like, wow. All right, you go first.
I will start, but then please join.
You want to jump in? No, all right. Then I'll come to you, Sven.
Yeah, my first thought was actually just deliver answers to people's problems. I think this is the key factor here. We shouldn't just talk about it's important for us. We have to deliver those answers. And actually, the second thought was when you started to talk about the dating apps. I don't know why the connotation, but
I could answer, but not here.
No, it's just like to find certain groups with certain issues and certain answers. Just to bring an idea, like in Hungary, Momentum was the first political party who actively communicated in LGBTQI rights. We went to the Pride. We actually had a lot of topics on LGBTQI issues, which actually resulted that community that actually many times tends to vote progressive left. Actually, they really joined more the liberal voter base, and not only as voters but also as activists and politicians. So it was a very good way to recruit people also for growth. And then I think we could also name a lot of other topics and issues and target groups, from green policies to economic policies. But I think this is, besides having a long-term vision, I think this is the key, that we have to identify those groups that we are representing and deliver answers for those groups.
Zoltán, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and then Sven another minute for him. So go.
Yes, just a very quick answer. I was thinking, like, who might be the people who are the most falling in love with liberal ideas and liberalism, and probably it's the people of North Korea or Saudi Arabia. So people who do not have these liberties and freedoms are the people who are who might be the most open to this. To them, you don't need to explain why liberalism is attractive, because they know exactly. And by this, I'm not suggesting that people's freedoms and liberties should be taken away so that they don't take liberalism for granted. But when I said that it should be explained, that it should be made clear how fundamental these values are for us, for our society, this is what I was trying to reflect on, more or less, to make people understand that the lack of liberalism in our contemporary societies and the lack of strong liberal values present in everyday politics would actually be much bigger of a problem than one might actually imagine.
Okay, Sven?
So let me see whether it is on. Yeah. So about the appeal and how we can establish kind of an intellectual sexiness, again, I go back to what liberals usually do. I go back to a thinker like Friedrich August von Hayek. He has this brilliant piece in the end of Intellectuals and Socialism, and he says we have to work to make liberalism an intellectual adventure again. And that is what it is not the case. And I say that as somebody who reads way too many books about liberalism. It's my day-to-day work, right? It has not become an intellectual adventure. It has also not become a political adventure or a think tank adventure. We are claiming to be always on the side of innovators, entrepreneurs, and are we doing it? I'm sometimes skeptical. We are very habitually conservative as liberals, and I don't think that this fits properly. So we have to promote those people who push the extravaganza in our movement politically, those leaders that are different, that are pushing things, that's something that we should listen to. In the think tank world, making things differently and intellectually, as I told you before, what are the liberal thinkers of the last 30 years that we would put on a pedestal? Even somebody like me will have a hard time coming up with that. So making it an intellectual adventure.
Very good. We're going to move to the second question about institutions, and I'm going to throw it to you. But before, another data point, because the question about institutions is really interesting, and we can continue this after the panel. Because in Portugal, give you that example. In Portugal, we have a pretty much liberal society and liberal economy. We had the socialists on power for 8 years, and they are mostly a liberal party. Why? Because European Union is behind, saying, okay, if you want all this money, you have to actually start liberal policies in the market. And actually that happens with Hungary with the rule of law. So yes, institutions can push that in a way that could be a little less obvious. Oh, this is not like a liberal value, but well, you should do this because this is good for everyone. But please give us your take.
Yeah, so I think like I've mentioned before, I understand that the current government or the political landscape might not be as maybe progressive to certain voters, and the expectations were very high, and I understand that they were not always met. I do think that we've made, so to me, liberalism is about economic freedom and a personal freedom, and creating equal opportunities for everyone, like I think I've mentioned before. And I do think we've managed to make some progress in that area. But also I think for me, it's the restoring rule of law is also very important, because I think it has a great influence on the economic growth. So if you want to run a business, you do have to be sure that the law you are basing your business on is not going to be, changed in a second, and you can trust that the ruling of the court is going to be, certain and not going to be changed, or no one's going to say that it's not accurate anymore because the judge who what's the word? The judge who took part in this ruling process, it shouldn't be a judge and stuff like that. So I do think we've also made progress in that area. Like I've said, I understand it may not be as fast as people expected, but also we do have to the government is made up of many parties and many ideas, and we do have to find a balance there. So yeah, I think in a way we've made a really great progress, especially in the restoring of rule of law. Still, we're waiting for the presidential elections to, I think, finish the process further.
Very good. I'm going to go into parting shots. We have around 5 minutes, so I'm going to give 30 seconds to each one. So, and let's start with you, Sven, which is the unicorns and the slow motion of the rhinoceros and the hippopotamus. Tell us a take-home message in 30 seconds. What would be the thing that you want our audience to get out of here?
Anyways, I have way too much time now. I felt like actually I'm sneaking onto this panel to get more speaking time. So anyways, that was
30
not my
seconds,
intention.
and that is.
Yeah, my takeaway message is liberalism is a way of life. It's not only a political theory. And the more we act as liberals, the more people we will make aware that they are liberals. Because most people are liberals out there in the world, and the way of life, and us labeling them, being a role model, will convert them intellectually.
Thank you, Sven. Oh, is there? All right, so Zoltán, what about you?
I hope you don't mind if I don't give just one single summary as a giveaway of what I believe of this whole topic, but as a quick reaction to the institutional question and the institutional issue, and that can be my takeaway if you wish. But I think it's very important to raise awareness of the recent economic Nobel laureate. Acemoglu has actually got the Nobel Prize for proving with his colleagues that I'm simplifying it a lot, but I'm not an economist myself. But virtually the point is that liberal democracies are more efficient when it comes to economic progress, and this is something that we haven't spoken about. And Aleksandra, just after what you said about the institutional issue, it came to my mind that it's also very important to understand that we are not only talking about some abstract values and abstract ideas, we are talking about economic reality. So I think it also adds quite a lot to the institutional question and to the general liberal narrative.
Zoltán.
Oh, sorry. My, I guess, main message would be that it's important to support every liberal organization and youth organization because those youth organizations are usually made up of future liberal politicians.
Well, you have 20 seconds.
That's okay. I can give it to the rest of you guys.
Tamas, you working in Brussels in the bubble in the European Liberal Forum.
Yes. Well, actually, the European Liberal Forum, our motto is on the future. And yeah, actually, I just repeat myself that we have to have a vision about the future and then about those challenges that are ahead of us, and we have to deliver answers. And I think this is the main task of policymakers and political decision makers: deliver answers and have a vision.
Perfect. Or I'm going to end the panel by saying that we're in good hands making liberalism sexy with thinkers like this. So thank you so much, Tamas, Aleksandra, and Zoltán. And also, Sven, will thank you again for all your contributions. And with this, we conclude this session. This is tremendous. I'm always so privileged to be here, so happy to be in this event. Me being from Portugal and coming to Poland with my Polish friends and see the Freedom Games in action is just something that blows my mind. And actually, I'm selling that idea to other friends. Actually, there's one sitting right there, where we were actually driving from the airport here, and I told him, and he won't let me lie. Prepare to get your mind blown because Freedom Games is so spectacular. So thank you so much for that from me. And Leszek?
Right, so first of all, I really wanted to thank you all that stayed with us so long. I know this is, it's not perhaps the best place to stay for 1 hour and a half, but I do hope that you like our improvised, well, let's say pretty planned discussion. And I could say that this is the end, but this is not the end, because now you see a QR code, and this QR code actually leads you to the rest of the conversation, which you can become a part of. So we can really suggest that you join our European Liberal podcasts and listen to us more than once a year.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming. This was amazing, so thank you.
And please do come back to the Freedom Games next year. It's gonna be, and can I say for the first time, October 24, 26, and the main stage next time. All right?
All right, good deal. Thank you.
We'll ask the organizers.
Radość, nadzieja, życie, wyzwanie, pasja, pamięć, zaufanie, pokój, jedność. Słowa tworzą świat. Polskie Radio. Źródło wiarygodnych informacji. Dziś Nowy Jork, jutro Londyn. Za chwilę Paryż, Warszawa, Berlin. Na całym świecie kultura pulsuje rytmem. Wystarczy tylko włączyć dwójkę. Dwójka, Polskie Radio. Jesteś na miejscu.
Jedzą kanapki z kawiorem.
Nadzwyczajna kasa.
Obrażanie dziennikarzy telewizji polskiej.
Chodzi o działania polityczne.
Przygotowanie ofiar dla pedofilów.
Für Deutschland.
TVP Info. Włącz się na nowo.
Rodzina spółek Pelion to 12 000 osób pracujących w ponad 300 spółkach w Polsce, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii i na Litwie. Jesteśmy liderem w branży ochrony zdrowia. Od 1990 roku dbamy o długość i jakość życia. Pracować z nami możesz w jednym z 7 obszarów.
Polskie Radio.
Jedynka.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Plany biznesowe powstają z marzeń. Dlatego nie ma dwóch takich samych firm. Jedni chcą działać na całym świecie. Innym cały świat mieści się w dłoni. Sukces biznesu to nie tylko jego wielkość, ale też szczęście, jakie przynosi ludziom. PKO Bank Polski.
Uwielbiam szycie w sieci. Wczoraj podszyłem się pod wnuczka, wieczorem uszyłem intrygę na apce randkowej, a dziś planuję grubymi nićmi szyte oszustwo z promocją. Tak się szyje.
Na oszustów są sposoby. Zapoznaj się z poradami ekspertów na niedajsiepodszyć.pl.